If we aren't careful, social media can become a place where we can very easily indulge our sinful nature in ways that cause us to turn ourselves into little idols. We can become consumed with building our brand, bowing to the desires of our followers, and sharing versions of ourselves that really aren't who we are at all. In a day and age where we experience ramped up identity pressure, we need to go to the right source to discover who we've been made to be. Today, I'm chatting with author and pastor Justin Poythress about overcoming these temptations and finding stability and purpose in Jesus on this episode of Youth Culture Matters.
From the Center for Parent-Youth Understanding, this is Youth Culture Matters. If you're a parent, youth worker, educator, counselor, grandparent, or anyone else who cares about kids, we're glad you've joined us for this practical, informative, and hope-filled podcast. This is a place where together we talk and think Christianly about the rapidly changing world of today's children, teens, and young adults.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Youth Culture Matters. I'm Walt Mueller here at CPYU, along with Chris Wagner, who's pushing all the buttons and spinning dials or whatever it is he does over there. And we're excited today. I'm excited because I get to chat with someone I'm just meeting for the first time. And he's won a lot of points already because he's a Philly guy. We'll hear a little bit about that. And I did tell him that he has 10 points off because in his bio there are all these wonderful, wonderful things. And then he admits his greatest sin. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan. So we may have to come and revisit that. But we're thrilled here that Justin Poythress is joining us. Justin, are you in Boise right now? As
yes,
we speak?
Yeah, Boise, Idaho.
Okay, I have to say that right. Boise. How do I?
Boise.
That's Boise.
You're getting an education already. Well, because this is how you sound like a true. If you ever head over to Boise, which there's not a ton of reason to be here, except it's beautiful. You want to go and check out, but it's not. The challenge with Boise is that it's not like, oh, I'll do Boise and then like the Northeast and I'll stop by New York or DC. I'll visit these other, no, you're going to go like several hours to get to anything. There's some national parks, but you're going to drive good 10 hours or so, or 6 hours, Yellowstone. But anyway, so if you want to sound like a native, it's one of these, the shibboleths of Boise, that you drop a soft S. It's not a Z. When if you say it like a Z, they'll know you're an out of towner. Okay. So it's Boise.
Yeah. Okay. Does it win you anything when you say it right, other than respect?
They know that you're not from California.
Okay.
Which is, you're scoring some points because there's so many, so much influx of the West Coast, and they're like, okay, they've been here at least a few years. So
yeah. Well, we were talking before we started to hit record here, and I got to ask this because you do have the Philly accent. I love it. How do you say? Have you slipped up out there when WATER? How do you say it when?
Yeah, I don't do the wooder.
Okay.
I think that was intentional from my parents, and it's funny to hear you say that, because I think that it's a dialect that usually is only more identifiable for people who are closer to the Northeast. Out here, I don't think that there's a lot of people who pick up. But neither of my parents were from Philadelphia. My mom was Cleveland and my dad was from Fresno. And so they adamantly tried to avoid some of the most grotesque Phillyisms. Yeah.
That's a good descriptor there. Well, I grew up talking like that. And I deliberately, when I moved out of the area and I moved to the western part of the state, I stopped doing the water thing because people would go, "What are you talking about?
What are you talking? What is that?"
Yeah. But you know what? I've been going. We're in Lancaster now, and we're just an hour and a half, west of Philly. But it's a different accent here, multiple accents here, so I can pick up on the Philly. And my daughter lives in Delco. And so, the Delco accent, we were talking about accents this morning. So, all right. So just I got to give a little bit of your bio here because I'll forget.
Okay, sure.
I'll forget. We're having too much fun here. So I'm going to read this. So Justin grew up in the suburbs of Philly, as you know. We talked a little bit about that before. Studied education at Vanderbilt, so he's been around a little bit. Taught middle school for 2 years in Nashville, earned his MDiv at Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia, where his dad's a professor, and he also completed his DMin with a focus on identity there. And he was in Indianapolis and then Fort Myers, serving as assistant pastor in churches there. Came to Boise in 2022. Has a wife named Liz, 2 daughters, a golden doodle, and he's the lead pastor now at All Saints Presbyterian Church in Boise. So, Justin, I'm so glad you're here. Now, I did warn you.
Pleasure.
I did warn you before we get into it. Now, I will say this, that the reason why we have Justin on here is I ran across a wonderful article he had written back in May of 2022 that was posted on the Gospel Coalition site titled How to Think Wisely About Becoming a Social Media Celebrity. And if you've listened into the podcast or listened to our 1-minute daily Youth Culture Today spot, that little podcast, you'll know we talk about this a lot, that this is one of the dangers in our social media world, that we can indulge our pride. We can indulge our longing for standing and attention, and so with social media. And so I'm glad we're going to have this conversation. But before we get into that, the article's great. We do this little thing, and I did give him fair warning this morning, but I did not tell him what I was going to ask him. If you listen to the podcast, you know we do this thing from time to time with people who are fun, and we call it Take 5, and we're going to throw 5 questions at him. He knows not what any of them are, and he just needs to give us a good answer. So I love this. So let me start with this, all right? Justin, best part of growing up in the Philly suburbs, best part, what was it?
Rita's Water Ice.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Rita's Water Ice, it is. Why do you even call this water ice? It's a ridiculous. That is very much a Philadelphia title for this. Are you familiar with Rita's?
Well, I am, because Rita's is like a franchise, right?
They are.
Yeah.
They didn't used to be. They
right,
franchised recently. I would also add soft pretzels. They have the best
there you go.
Soft pretzels.
You're not kidding.
But I've got a sweet tooth, and so Rita's Water Ice. It's for most people. This is Italian ice.
Yeah.
Okay. But the texture that Rita's does this, I don't know what it is that they mastered the texture of it. It's super fine.
Yep.
And it's just exceptional. The flavors are exceptional. Yeah.
I
miss it. I do miss it. It hasn't made it out to Idaho yet.
Yeah, but 5 points off because you didn't call it water ice. I mean, if you're really from Philly, you have to call it water ice. So, yeah. Well, let me ask you a question on the whole water ice thing. Favorite flavor on that? I'm giving you 1A question here.
Yeah, that's fine. Root beer, and that's a bit of a cheat because I love root beer. Anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right.
They don't always have root beer, but I think that most of the time your odds are high they'll have root beer as one of the options.
Yeah. This is great. Here's another question related. 1B. Did you ever did you guys ever go down to the shore for vacation? Did your family ever go down to the shore?
Very occasionally. My parents were not shore people. They actually detested the beach.
Okay.
Because they felt it was, which I understand. There's a lot of knocks. It's hot. It's, you get sand everywhere. Yeah. You're going to get sunburned. We're very white people. You're going to have to lather in sunscreen. You step on things, whatever. So they just didn't.
Yeah.
I think my entire childhood, we as a family sought out. It was, Ocean City back when Ocean City, I understand it's changed somewhat, but that was kind of the family.
Yeah, that's a place. Beach that's where I was going with this. Because the guy who pedals up and down the beaches, and gets out on the beach and rings his bell and starts yelling, water ice, that's great stuff.
Oh, really?
Those guys. Oh, yeah. The one. So you got to get there. You got to get there. When you get back, go there. All right. Okay. So that's the first question with 3 parts. We're gonna spend a whole first.
Yeah, the whole first chunk is
the whole first chunk is just having fun. All right, okay, all right. This is great. On your bio, which I didn't read this part. It says you love peanut butter. What is your favorite brand of peanut butter and why? I mean, if you say you love peanut butter, you have to be somewhat of a peanut butter snob, right? So you probably have a favorite brand.
Yeah, I think I would classify myself less as a snob and more just enthusiast.
Okay, right.
They're all good. I think it's hard for me to, and I'm cheap, so what I will do
Okay.
is I'll get the store brand creamy,
Okay.
the like just this whatever the store label is. But to me, Jif and Skippy, I forget one of them. I think it was Jif had this like big manufacturing snafu. Something got into their cans for a while, so that still has a bit of a negative
Yeah.
connotation in my mind, but I almost never have either of those. I think I'll never do chunky. Chunky does kind of ruin it for me.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I
You
haven't
like the
met somebody for
creamy.
a long time who prefers chunky, but if it's creamy peanut butter and it's like the store brand, I'll have natural. I'm
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
40. So I'm trying to be a little more healthy. And we've got kids, and so my wife has steered us into the Costco, the Kirkland
Oh, yeah, yeah.
brand. That's a stir brand. So normally if I have my preference, if I'm just having peanut butter, it's not a stir brand oil on top. It's already mixed in with all of the trans fats, whatever gross stuff they're doing to preserve this thing, but it's delicious. It's
Yeah.
sugary. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about your article because I'm getting an education just listening about peanut butter. So
Yeah.
that's good. All right. Well, I hesitate to do this, but I got a part two to that question. Favorite candy with peanuts in it or peanut butter in
Yeah,
it?
Reese's.
Okay. All
No,
right.
no
yeah.
question. I mean,
So,
yeah.
yeah, this is crazy. I had in our church, our PCA church in Lancaster here, Westminster, probably about 3 months ago, there was a young couple in front of me with a kid, and the kid was a little antsy, didn't bother me. And when they got up, when the service was over, they stood up and they apologized. They said, "Well, I haven't met you before, you know," and they were from Hershey, came down to worship, and their last name was Reese. And I said, "Well, that's got to be a weird name to have, in Hershey." He goes, "Well, that was my great grandfather." So yeah, that's where they came from. So I thought maybe it'd be
Wow.
Goldenberg peanut chews with Philly. I mean, that was my dad's favorite. Yeah, you got to try those.
I've never even heard of those.
All right.
I'm
Well,
missing,
guess what?
you got me intrigued.
Okay, you're intrigued. You're not going to be able to get them out there, Chris. Make a note. I got to send them some. All
If
right.
you send some out,
Yeah.
I'll definitely
Okay.
Goldenberg peanut chews.
Yeah, they're an old Philadelphia
okay.
candy. They're great. All right, this is a great one. Your bio says you're a fan of character-driven sitcoms, and what is your favorite sitcom? Character-driven sitcom.
Yeah, I think again I'm gonna be kind of boring here. Actually, no. I'll take. Yeah, I'll be on the boring side. The Office,
Okay.
The Office all around, right? Like that's everybody's. But it really, I mean, obviously Steve Carell drove that. But I mean that was the heart and soul of it, But I grew up watching The Simpsons, which the thing that I appreciate about The Simpsons, which it's you take some, you leave some, because it went on for a long time. I haven't watched it for a very long time, but their cast of characters, like the breadth of characters
Yeah.
that they had and that they could get to over a lot of seasons, it really, I think it works because of that. Parks and Rec was another really, really good one.
So you like that?
Again, just
you like
really
that
strong
genre,
characters.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, here's number 4. You taught middle school. What is your favorite thing about middle schoolers?
So can I use
Yeah.
what we talked
Yeah.
So we were talking before show, and I gotta explain this right away. But so I worked with youth ministry in some capacity or other. I shouldn't say youth ministry, just youth, right? Either teaching in some capacity or youth ministry for over a decade. That was one of the primary things I was doing. And I would tell people, look, the beautiful thing with youth ministry is the bar is very low. And what I meant by that, and it just is, it was so beautiful as far as particularly with middle schoolers. It's true for high schoolers though. It's just like, but definitely middle school. It's like, this is one of the worst seasons of your life. Like what I'll tell people is like, and I would tell middle schoolers this, like, you will hear a lot of different things from people, but I have yet to talk to a single adult who's like, hey, if you could go back to one time in your life, if you could relive, no one said middle school. That hasn't come up. Right. And so there's just a real toughness to what you're going through and the peer pressure and the anxiety, the uncertainty in yourself that you feel. And so what's happening as a teenager outside of your parents, because you have this complex relationship with your parents, but if there's any single other adult who just shows up on a consistent basis and you can tell that they care, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a win, and they're happy, and they don't really know how to show that appreciation necessarily, but they really, really appreciate, because that is what they're looking for. They don't care if you're the smartest, funniest, coolest, or not even close to any of those things. They really don't care.
Yeah.
They can sense and sniff out BS. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but they can very well, and they just want to know if you care.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Just relationships, that's a key. And anybody of any age, I go crazy when I meet these guys who are in youth ministry who are recruiting volunteers, and they'll say, I'm not going to go for anybody over the age of 30. And I mean, what a horrible thing that you don't put older people in the lives of young kids. But I like how you say showing their appreciation. Yeah, I made me think back, and when I was in a local church, all the inappropriate ways that the guys showed their appreciation to me. You read it otherwise. All right, okay.
Yep.
Last question.
Yep.
And I failed to mention this. You've got a new book that just came out. And tell us the title again. It's Who Am I?
Yeah, who am I and what am I doing with my life? We tried to make it as long as possible.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so that's going to lead into this question. If you could get youth workers to read one book other than your own, what book would you require them to read? What would you recommend to them to read? I love this question because I learn about new things.
Yeah, I think
that's a stumper.
I'm going to incline towards, a bit of an escape outlet, I guess, here, and say either the Chronicles of Narnia or a modern version of Pilgrim's Progress.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
And that's just to me, like I love those books, and I think what's happening within those is you get obviously stories, you get pictures that are communicating the reality of the Christian life and the Christian journey in a way that tends to be just much more accessible. I think that it's going to give you good, and obviously the Bible, right? Go to the Bible, but you step outside of the Bible, and what teens and just adolescents as a whole are going to have an easier time getting their hands around, just like all of us to some degree, but especially I think at that age, is you start telling compelling stories rather than just straight dictation teaching.
Yeah. And boy, those things just have stood the test of time. And I'm reading through a modern version of Pilgrim's Progress right now. I can't remember who the translator was of this particular one, but I've read it several times. And one of the last times before this, Kevin Yee, my friend who's doing youth ministry in California in a Korean American church, or at the time was, he had his students reading Little Pilgrim's Progress over the course of the summer. And I thought, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to read along with them. I did not participate in any of their discussions, but I thought the recommendation was great. So this is really, really good. Let's transition here. I could keep talking about all this stuff with you forever. He would be great on a road trip, right, Chris? I mean, it would be great to have Justin in the car with us on a road trip.
It's good. You let me know in enough advance time if there's
you
some good
go?
pit stops.
Okay, all right.
For peanut butter and McDonald's. I'm a big McDonald's fan. Then, yeah.
Okay, well, Chris is interested. Go ahead, Chris. Tell us where you like to stop.
Well, yeah, anywhere with food, but Buc-ee's is obviously a current favorite, but yeah.
Have you done
Chris
that
must
yet?
Be a Texan.
Buc-ee's?
Are you a Texan guy?
No, yeah, but moving more in your direction. I'm a sucker for Culver's. Culver's is one of my favorite. That's Midwest cheeseburger chain, cheese curds, frozen custard, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Culver's is the Midwest staple for sure.
Yeah, he's a Bucky's guy. So, all right. Well, we'll keep that in mind. You know, you would be fun to have along, and I wouldn't be able to take any naps because we'd be talking the whole time. So
I think our latest road trip. I think I made you stop at Bucky's 4 different times.
Yeah, we
right?
stopped 4 times. 4 times. It was great. It was great. I didn't buy much anything, but just got overwhelmed with everything. So, well, listen, Justin, I want to transition here into this whole thing, and maybe just sort of some introductory stuff before we take a break here, and then we'll come back to a lot of what you have in here. But, you know, one of the things that I've been saying to youth workers for a long, long time, because I'm seeing it more and more, is in our social media world, everybody wants to, you know, I mean, look, we have a podcast, you've been on podcasts, you've written books, I've written books, but everybody wants to, you know, do this and develop an audience, and it's not always motivated by, hey, the Lord has laid something on my heart here, and it's just a natural thing for me, you know, to write about it. It's more like people are aspiring now to developing a following and using social media to do that, to become an influencer. I'm seeing that with people in ministry. I'm seeing it with people in youth ministry. You see it. It's a male and female thing as well with Instagram. You know, it can be killer, the comparison. And I mean, I've shared this story before, but I was speaking at a church here locally several years ago on technology, digital discipleship, and it was teenagers and parents together. And at the end, this couple comes up, and they had like a 13-year-old, 14-year-old boy, smirk on his face. He's in front of them. They're pushing him towards me. And while they're doing this, they're saying, go ahead, tell them what you want to do with your life. Tell them what you want to do. And he said, I'm going to be a YouTube influencer. I'm going to have, you know, millions of followers and be on YouTube. And, you know, of course, they were putting me in an awkward spot where they wanted me to kind of steer him in another direction. And I tried to talk some reality into him, you know, of that. And, you know, what's driving this, what's in your heart for that. And that's what I love, I think, about what you did here with this, how to think wisely about becoming a social media celebrity. What is it that drove you to write this article?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and it was good to kind of I had to reread this myself, and it's just, I mean, we could definitely easily talk about this for a long chunk of time, because it's just a fascinating world to me. I would say there's a few different things that drove this. You know, there, like you've pointed out, it is a burgeoning career. And I think you talk to, I don't have the stats offhand on these, but you talk anymore to elementary age kids, certainly as they're starting to get towards the late elementary, and you ask them the kind of classic, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it used to be, you know, the unrealistic, I want to be a singer, I want to be an actor or actress, I want to be an NFL player. Okay. But now it is increasingly, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a video gamer. And the challenge here is you want to roll your eyes and say, okay, well, that's nice. We'll see what really happens. And also, I think generationally, there's something there for myself as well. We were like, come on, like what value is this? But I think that what we need to understand there is that there's a bucket of, I want to be a entertainer. All what those things are is entertainer. And it's what you, as a kid, you see these people and you look up to them. And so that bucket hasn't changed. It's just that media, technology, whatever, like these things change. And so I think one of the things, though, that we have to reckon with is that it's not a one-to-one transition of what it used to be, of like, oh, I want to be a basketball player. Okay, well, that's nice. You'll grow out of that. Because the reality is, and what we need to, I think, own and grapple with, the opportunity for you to be a professional paid YouTuber is much more accessible than, for example, I'm going to be a professional actor or singer. Again, I don't know the odds offhand because, I mean, partially because this is such a burgeoning and growing market, but it's like you don't have to do that much. Like, it is a job. Like, you can get this skill, you can master this skill, and it doesn't require just, freakish, athletic, innate born talent, or, just you grew up with parents who are in the music industry, whatever. You can just figure this out. You can do it. You can watch enough content. You can consume the media that's out there, and you can figure out your own niche, and you don't have to have any particular skill. One thing that comes to mind, I'll tell a ton of two other stories that sparked this interest in me. One was, or that I think have been rattling in my mind. I remember hearing this quote, so I can't verify it, but sounds very astute. Probably the smartest, most insightful thing to ever come from Kim Kardashian, which I'm not a Kardashian follower, but I'm
excited to hear this.
She said this was early on, because the Kardashians were kind of pre-runners to a lot of what we have in the social celebrity world, right? The reality star niche. Okay, these were people who were becoming famous for being famous, and some cheesed off reporter was just was talking to her and like, well, what is your skill? Like, what's your talent? And her response is, what has a talent is a juggling bear. Okay. That's a talent, a juggling bear. But she said, the difference between me and a juggling bear is I'm famous and the bear's not. And what she meant by that was her skill that she's mastered is fame. It is drawing on popular attention, knowing how to capture people's engagement. And like, that is a skill. And so that's something that the internet in many ways has democratized in a really powerful way, that you don't have to have a skill per se. And so it makes it so much more accessible, because it's like the people who are making gajillions of dollars, or not even gajillions, but like they're making a living from being a social media celebrity. You don't have to be super smart, talented, funny, have gained an academic or educational accessibility. You don't have to have any of these things. You just have to master some access to this is what people want. And the last story I would sprinkle in there is this started, and I make a reference to this in an article, but a number of years ago, not that long, but the movie Air came out about Michael Jordan. And I don't watch many movies anymore with little kids, but my wife and I managed to watch this one, which it was actually clean, which is, that's a rare thing. But, what really stood out to me in this movie is, yes, it was about Michael Jordan, but it was really accenting his and his mother's focus towards building his brand. And he was one of, again, these sort of forerunners. This is in the 80s, 80s and early 90s, of saying, I am not going to allow a brand to own me. I'm going to become the brand. And that message has just absolutely taken over. Yeah. Like, of every single person, you are the brand. Don't sell out to somebody else. You can and have the capacity to be your own brand. How great is that? Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about this, and right before we take a break, I just want to say this. This is good, that the implications of this for us in ministry, the implications of this for us in how we minister, and for parents, and how we're, training up and raising our kids, it's strong. We have to grapple with this, because in this way, it was never like this. Like, my parents never had to navigate this. I don't think I had to navigate this with my kids. Chris, who's sitting across from me, he has to navigate it.
And we have to navigate it ourselves because in our ministries, you have a book that just came out. Well, how do we tell people about our book? We use social media. I mean, that's the way we do it now. We use social media here to do that. And it's a tug, it's a pull, it's a push. It's like we just, it's a fine line that we have to walk. And that's why I want to talk about this. But I think there's a lot of implications theologically. We're going to talk about this when we come back. And then we're talking a lot now in the church about, I love that people are talking more about biblical anthropology. And I know that your new book, just the title, Who Am I? Just beginning with that, taps into that. We have to reclaim that. We're losing that because of this. So we're going to come back. We're going to do when we come back is Justin in this article has had 3 things. He suggested 3 things that each of us needs to watch out for. I think we need to warn our kids of the same, and we'll talk through those, and then we'll get a little bit into his book. We're talking to Justin Poythress, and this is Youth Culture Matters. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Parenting today can feel like trying to hit a moving target. With culture changing so fast, how do you help your kids navigate the difficult realities they face, all to God's glory? Here at CPYU, we want to walk alongside you. That's why we've created a completely free resource just for you, our CPYU Parent Prompts. With each parent prompt, we look at a current youth culture trend and give you the background information you need to understand their world. But we don't just leave you with the facts. We provide biblically based, theologically sound insight into how God wants us to respond. Then we give you practical conversation starters to help you guide your kids into responding to the trend according to God's will and God's way. Understand the cultural trend, know the biblical truth, have the necessary nurturing conversation. Access our growing free archive of CPYU parent prompts right now at cpyu.org. Welcome back, everybody, to Youth Culture Matters. We're talking to Justin Poythress, and we're talking about some of the, I guess, pitfalls of living on this, digital landscape now. This new social media world. It's actually not so new. For me, a guy my age, it seems new still, but there's so much we have to navigate. I think one of the things that's going to be helpful is realize that for those who, it's just been part of their life all along, maybe jump out of the soup a little bit to see what some of the temptations are. And we're talking with Justin about his article, How to Think Wisely About Becoming a Social Media Celebrity. I just want to mention this as well, that Chris Wagner here at CPYU, if you go to cpyu.org, find the player for this episode of Youth Culture Matters and scroll down, you'll see links to everything that's mentioned here, and whether it's a book, a website, or whatnot. And this article, there'll be a link to this article from the Gospel Coalition website as well. So, Justin, you list these 3 things to watch out for in the article. I don't know if since you've written it, you've come up with more, but I wonder if you could give us a flyover. I'll prompt you with each one. Build your brand. You talked about this a little bit. I know when I've talked to youth workers over the years, I did a seminar years ago, Wisdom for a Young Youth Worker, and one of the things that I said in light of everything that was happening, much of what we've mentioned already with social media, I said, listen, you're a human being. You're not a brand. You're not a brand. Give us some guidance on this, and how would you warn youth workers? How would you warn parents to help them warn their kids? 3 things to watch out for. That's the first one. Build your brand.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting to me about this, I want to start maybe paradoxically walking back this comment a little bit because there's complexity that I think we need to acknowledge. And so actually I've been toying with, haven't gotten around to it, but another article that I could write is You Are a Brand. But in the sense that I think that we need to recognize specifically in a digitally laden world, like there's no going back. People live online, people interact online, people come across information first step online. And so, but even without the online, there's a sense of like, well, you've got to ask a deeper question of what does somebody mean by a brand? Because in the sense that I'll just talk about you for a second, Walt. Like, as the representative and the leader of Youth Culture Matters, you walk outside, and this is the way it is in ministry, but this is certainly the way it is every time you get online. You are a brand. You outside your job are still on. And I think this is something that it's just become more widespread because of the internet, but it's not new. It's something that any sort of public figure has dealt with for a long time. You think about people in political office, you think about celebrities, you think about certainly people in ministry, whatever, even, older times, people who are education, teachers. You are a public facing person. And within those roles, you have to be aware you are representing something. And so what you do and say is yourself. And I think most importantly, as a Christian, and this is kind of the crux of the matter, that brand should be Jesus.
Yeah.
That you're representing and there's complexity there because you, Walt, or myself, or Chris, we're individuals. And so as well, there is a God-given goodness to you go out and be Walt, be who you are in the fullness of who God has made you to be, and represent the best version of you possible to other people so that you can be salt and light and a witness to Jesus, because that's ultimately the kind of high level brand that you're under. And then kind of at a lower level, you are a brand in the sense of, well, you are representing a set of values, a compelling vision of what it means even to be a human being. So all of that is on the positive side. And I say that because you've always kind of got to be cautious as far as, okay, there's truth and then there's distortion. And so within the online world, and what we talked about a little bit before, is there's this democratization of branding. And not all of that is inherently, and this is a lot of the complexity in the digital world. You can't just have this gut level reaction, particularly as a Christian, that Christians have always been prone to, of world out there, bad, ick, stop. It's all bad. And so just, throw out the TV, throw out the internet, whatever. Like, that's not, I don't believe that that's a biblical model, but you've got to weed through this. And so there's a sense in which, yes, be aware of what you're saying, be aware of how you're presenting yourself online, but at the same time, the you are a brand line in the distorted, secular, non-Christian version, it starts to, well, who are you? Well, you start thinking about yourself, you start thinking about your identity as a product to be pitched. And that's where it really gets to be dehumanizing.
Yeah.
That's where it really, you start carving it away at the intricacy, at the complexity, at the beauty, at the failures, at the realness of who you are. And you think, okay, how do I sell the product of me? And it's a challenge, like you referred to earlier, because all of us increasingly with the internet have to be marketing. And it used to be, just like this marketing profession. You go back 100 years ago, nobody had any clue what that is, because part of the reason is that you're living in a small town, localized world. Your marketing of yourself is just your reputation. People know you, you prove that, you show up over time. But now there's a sense of more, okay, I've got to be more thoughtful about this because there's this medium of the internet marketplace. And so to market means I have to have some knowledge of how do I get out there with whatever it is that you're trying to do that. And that hits different jobs differently. But the reality is, particularly for younger generations, that more and more and more is an important skill, that it's not a bad skill. It's just, you got to not lose your humanity. You got to not lose your fundamental ownership to God before all else.
Yeah. So, and that segues really well, what you just said there, into what you listed as number 2, listen to your audience. One of the things we've talked about here is this term audience capture. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole idea of audience capture. And I went on and I pulled down a definition because I couldn't come up with it in my own mind, in my own words, super well. But the phenomenon where an influencer is affected by their audience, catering to it with what they believe it wants to hear or is willing to pay for. So there's that feedback loop where I'm not really being myself. I'm being who you want me to be so I can increase my presence. And as you've said, where there's money to be made, now I can make money. And there's a lot of classic examples of this, even though we haven't lived in this world super long, of, how people kind of shift, to get that, to capture that audience and hold that audience. Because, what do you do when it comes crashing down? And so this is where I was thinking, like, you said, listen to your audience. The message is code for be relevant and media savvy. How do we balance that? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. And again, I would go to with just like the last one. And with all of these, it's not like you were talking about, it's not wholly wrong. So you think about, again, we'll talk about your ministry to youth workers and parents. Boy, well, you better not start talking to people who are trying to learn how to, teach and advance research in the higher academia, and pretend like those are the people who are your audience. Like, that's going to start having some serious problems as far as your effectiveness in what you're trying to do. And so there's nothing wrong with having this idea of knowing your audience. I mean, that's just like a communication 101
right.
Piece of wisdom. But the tension here is between, as a Christian, all of us ultimately stand before the audience of one. You stand before God. He is that first audience. And that's my concern, again, with a lot of these, a lot of the social media world and trying to make your living off of that. And none of these are new concerns. It's someone's propensity to be corrupted and swayed by peer pressure, by just trying to sell something, by I want to get in on. And how do you not lose your values and not lose your morals? Well, if you don't have a moral compass to begin with, if you don't have a fixed point, which is God and his word, and living in an honoring and faithful relationship with Jesus, then you don't have, or I shouldn't say you don't have, you have, but you're left on yourself of finding where are the edges of moral acceptability of what you will and won't do in order to cater to your audience.
Yeah.
And so the story that comes to my mind, this was actually, I'm stealing this. I think this was Trevin Wax with the Gospel Coalition. This was years ago. And he highlighted, there was a media influencer. Who knows where this guy is now? I don't even remember his name. He's probably gone, right? Because that's the nature of the internet, right? I mean, just like it's relentless how fast you've got to stay on top of the current trends. But he started out just like posting videos of himself having lunch with the intended audience of people who are lonely and want somebody to feel like they're talking and eating with. And he was, maybe late teens or early 20s. As time went on, though, what he observed is he got a lot more attention. He got a lot more views when he started eating larger meals or more unhealthy meals. And so what he actually did, he gained 300-400 pounds. Right. So you probably heard about this, right? And it's just, but that's this example where it was tremendously unhealthy. But what he saw was, I'll do anything. This is what will get me clicks. This is what will get me views. And so you got to be aware of that on the front end. Where are you willing to go and not go in order to build an audience?
Yeah, and what are the lines that are drawn for us in Scripture when we look at that? And I know one of the things you mentioned here is fear of man. And, is that what's in our heart, what's driving a lot of this? I was thinking as you were talking there about a young man I knew since he was very young, who grew up, and I ran into him at a youth worker convention. I was surprised to find him there because he wasn't in youth ministry at the time. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he handed me a little card, and he said, "I'm here to basically build I have a blog." and I'm trying to build my audience, and he's getting people on there. And I was, talking to him about, this is when blogging was fairly new, and he was really cutting edge in so many ways with the technology. And as I was talking to him, something in me just didn't sit right with what he was saying. And it became more obvious as he spoke about what was motivating him and where he was trying to go with this. And I think one of the most telling things was when he said, and this is where I think we know we've gone over a line, when we self-evaluate, and he said to me, I get drunk on the attention. I get drunk on the applause. It's intoxicating to me. And I just thought, there you've crossed a line. And hearing those conversations, it's deeply troubling, but it should be deeply personal for us as well, because we can start to see where we teeter on that, right? And I know the temptation, the temptation's always there. And so we talk internally here at CPYU about how to best do this and bring honor and glory to God, as opposed to trying to, feed what intoxicates us, which is bringing honor and glory to ourselves. You on the third one you said is share the real you, because what happens is when you're playing to your audience, now you're not really being you, So I love this recommendation. Talk a bit about that. Share the real you.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, and this is I think a segue point. Well, because all these things are connected. But one thing that occurs to me, I think it's really helpful to differentiate, okay, what are the kind of human nature, ongoing, eternal struggles, and what things has the age of the internet accelerated? All right. And so one of those things is what we're talking about. All of this really boils down to, maybe you put it as fear of man, desire to please, desire for fame and accolades, to be well liked. That's eternal. That's in the human heart. That's never not been an issue. I think what the internet has done is it has really accelerated the feedback loop. And so what used to take a lot longer, as far as like weeks, months, years, to be like, is this working? Is this working? Maybe there's some exceptions, but for the most part, it's like, okay, I'm going to try to be X, Y, or Z sort of person. And you just have to see in real time with real relationships, are people buying in? Versus I post something, immediately I see how well this is doing. Immediately I change or alter if I'm sold in. And so that feedback loop, if you don't have those boundaries, happens much faster. As you get sucked into this. And so I think that the sharing of the real you, like all of these, I would say it's like, boy, that's something the Bible would call us to. You want to live authentically, you want to be truthful. But that, when you're building an audience online, what is real?
Yeah.
What is real that you're sharing? And I think that you have to have at least some knowledge that as you step into a digital world, there is an angle of you, there is an intentionality, there is a thoughtfulness of what's happening, a deliberateness of what's happening that is more so than if somebody just catches you in conversation. Now that it's less and less so, because people will post faster and faster, and so just something pops into their mind. Okay. And so, but I say that in that there's a sense of unrealness as you engage in an online world. We can't overstate the case because people live increasingly online. And so there is a sense of, okay, this is real, but it's also, I would go back to, where do you determine, because all of us are malleable in our identities. All of us have the ability to change and to shift. And that's not always it's not a bad thing. That's sort of the biblical purpose of sanctification.
Right,
you want to change and grow in the right way. And so when you're talking about those sharing the real you, it just is harder, man. It's just harder when you are going through this thoughtfulness. And I think in some ways, the faster the internet and the more intrusive the internet is, the less aware we are of I'm crossing this boundary. I'm choosing to share this particular thought, these words, this video, because it's just so easy. Like I can just do this immediately and there's not a bunch of steps. And so I'm maybe less aware than ever of I am making a conscious decision to share something. And so there is something performative that's happening here. And it can be good performance. It can be like, I want to really build people up and share a good side of myself for others, or it can be any other motivation.
Yeah, and so a lot of it tears people down because we put our best selves out there and the comparison game starts. And, like everyone else, I can't live up to that. That's not me. And then so we pose aside. I always joke, we have this picture, the last wedding of one of my kids 6 years ago. And, there's everybody, all four of my kids, my wife, my grandkids, the in-law kid, everybody. And we're standing in front of a barn. Everyone's dressed to the hilt. And I will show that picture and I'll, say sarcastically, there's the perfect family in that split second. If you had seen the chaos prior to and the chaos immediately after, and I'm not just saying the minute prior to or the minute immediately after. I'm talking about years of chaos, right? This is not, it's great. This is our family. Let's enjoy the wedding. But this is not, we're not like this all the time. And I think that's where it undermines the kind of vulnerability and openness that needs to be there in the body of Christ when we're in real presence with each other so that we might build each other up and support each other in the midst of our brokenness. You don't have to put all your dirty laundry out there. That's for certain people, right? We share that with a small group. But I think, too, it can be counterproductive with the, with the comparison game. Let me just ask you very personally, because I can think of examples for me. Like, do you, when you're engaged with social media, do you sort of have a system you walk through or a series of questions you ask yourself as you we call it here taking a purposeful pause, and we have a series of questions we recommend that people filter things through. Is this necessary? Is this bringing glory to God? Or is what's driving me here in my heart to bring glory to myself? And we can fool ourselves in that as well. But I think just that, like you're talking about how quick things happen, any thoughts on that, or have you had to work that out in your own life? Some recommendations you could make?
It's always, that's a great question. Well, and it's always present. So I don't know, because it's helpful for me to think through. I don't know how, I don't know how adept or sort of how useful of a mentor on the subject I am, honestly, or how qualified, because honestly, I quit all social media about, 7 years ago.
So what drove you to that? What made you make that decision? Yeah,
I think there were a number of things. Conversations with my wife around that. I think that was useful. And I think just seeing on the balance, there is good to be had in social media, but it's just like, I think I had to recognize my own weakness of like, where am I spending time on this? Like, how am I using my time on this?
And that's a big one, the time.
On the balance, is this contributing or detracting more? And it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close
as
far as the presence of social media in my life. And so since then, and it's fascinating to me, Walt, and a little bit saddening, because since I made that decision, though, like I just haven't looked back. It has been just me personally, and I know, and this is why I just want to affirm, even as I'm saying this. I think that social media and the internet is a vital tool that Christians have to be using. Like I'm not trying to advocate for some kind of Stone Age withdrawalism. I don't think that's the healthiest overall. I do think that, on the balance for a lot of people, I will just testify for myself. Like I haven't missed it at all. At all. There's been no point in my life where I've looked back and been like, man, I'm really, I mean, that thought might flash of like, okay, I could promote this or plug this, but it's just like your time is it's such a limited resource, and anything that you use. And so, for example, for me, like I love writing. Writing is probably, the biggest thing that I would like to spend doing. And something I've even noticed within writing has happened is it has been social media sized. You look at Substack. So Substack is now the default place. And I would be on Substack probably if I hadn't tried to, had to overcome and like start a blog back in the older days, right before Substack came out. But Substack itself has become another, so you can't avoid it. You can't get around. Like you can hardly touch the internet anymore without being in a social media platform. And so I don't know. It's just, it's really hard. It's really hard to engage in, but I think what you're saying is useful at the very least. Things like screen timers, things like thoughtfulness. There's a guy in our church I know who's developed an app who, he's a Christian guy. I can't remember the name of this app, but it's something that will filter whatever other app you want through a prayer app. And it will make you go through a 15-second prayer pause before you access that app, right? So it's just like things of that nature that can like ground you first in like, what am I doing? And provide a little like, oh, I'm taking a step here.
Yeah.
Right. And make you conscious of the step that you're taking.
That pushes back on, the impulsivity. I think, look, I admire you for jumping off social media. I mean, my wife's not on there. Her heels are dug in. I mean, you could, there's no way anybody could force her. They could duct tape her to a chair and threaten torture. She would not go on. Chris is not on.
I should add, I think I am on Facebook, but I just never, like you can find me on Facebook. I never look at it or post. So,
well, yeah. I think, and people don't understand until you get out of there, how good it is. I'll just share this before we take a break. I was at a church, a couple of weeks ago, and the guy who preached, he was filling the pulpit, and he teaches a 1-credit class on anxiety at University of Delaware. And he was telling the story of, he gave the students an assignment. I want you to go, 4 days without your phone. That's what you're going to do. And I don't want you to lie to me. I want you to do 4 days. And he's a great guy. I mean, he has this ability to connect relationally. And so the students bought in. And this girl came up to him at the end of him giving the assignment and says, I haven't even started yet, but I hate this assignment. Well, she came back at the end and she said, the first day I hated the assignment, as I told you. The second day, I was just mad. She said, the third day, I understood why you gave us the assignment. And so she felt this freedom. It was like the shackles came off. Now, can we, do we have to stay off, or can we come back with some moderation? Can we set some standards? And I love what you said here, just some of the dangers that are there. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to finish up this conversation with Justin Poythress, and I want to talk about your new book, because it ties into all this, biblical anthropology, finding your identity, and what this means as a Christian. So it's a huge issue right now, so I'm glad this new resource is out. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
If you enjoy listening to Youth Culture Matters and would like to support the ongoing efforts of this ministry, you can do so by visiting cpyu.org/giving to make a donation. Your prayers and financial support make this podcast possible.
All right, so as we finish up, Justin, I want to hear more about this book. It's brand new. It's out a week, I think, as we record today. It came out on April 1st, so I know people will be hearing this in another week or so. But the book is out. Tell us the title again, and we'll include a link to it. And then tell us a little bit about what's in it, what you're trying to do with this, and who your audience is as well.
Yeah, so the book title is Who Am I, and What Am I Doing with My Life? Again, just, try to fit as long as it could be. And there's a subtitle, Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. So there's kind of some of your goal clause is the finding stability and purpose. Target audience, It's mainly young adults, so that officially is kind of 18 to 40. But I hope that it's very readable and engaging for, I would say, high school, upper high school, if they're, if they're enjoy reading. So the book really was, it was the product of my doctoral work, which was the product, actually, in a lot of ways, of my youth work, which was encountering the tip of the spear is the gender and sexual identity crisis that obviously is everywhere. But it was looking at it was having these conversations with kids, with teens, with parents, and realizing this is the last step manifestation of a lot of deep identity questions that everyone is trying to sort through. And relatively small minority end up being like, oh, okay, I think that I'm bisexual, or I think that I'm really a girl, or whatever it is. But everybody is having to sort through these fundamental identity questions that, again, I would emphasize it's not something that is new to human beings, because I would say the traditional biblical theological term for this is really sanctification. And so the aim of the book is, in many ways, I guess, sanctification. But it's put in identity language, which identity language makes that question, how do you become your best self? And so part of my goal right from the outset is understanding that identity conversations don't need to be for Christians, and this is particularly true, I think, in the Reformed conservative Christian world, don't have to be kind of like a triggering jump off the platform sort of place. As soon as somebody starts talking identity, here we go again. Let's stop talking about this. It's understanding, wait a second, when someone is talking about identity, they're talking about the human questions of life that the Bible is most interested in. Who are you? What are you on earth for? What is your purpose? Who are you in relationship with? Where do you belong? Where are you going? Those are some, actually, the titles of the chapters. I talk about what is authenticity, what is real freedom. How do you story? How do you narrate and tell a story about your own life? And so all of these things that we're doing all the time, whether you're an adult or a kid, we're always in the process of identity formation and identity shaping. And you reach, hopefully you reach a higher degree of solidity in your sense of identity just as a product of age, but it doesn't ever fully go away. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to address is that our modern culture, and a lot of what we've been talking about, the advent of the internet, has put a lot more pressure on the identity conversations, the identity decisions that people are making, because
the options too, right? All the options. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to get to, because the options are so much more.
Yeah.
The options are so much more, and they feel so much more accessible. And so what happens with that is, and a lot of this, again, whether you're being a social media, like, I think we should celebrate this. It's again, like, technology offers a lot of wonderful, beautiful, great opportunities and improvement of life. No question. The optionality of life and the things that you can do, and like even just being able to go to school online, like these kinds of things, that's great. And yet it's not a pure advantage. And so one of those disadvantages or pressures is, okay, I can be so many more things. The options feel so much wider, but then as a result of that, many, many more people, including myself, struggle with discontentment much more often.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. One thing I just wanted to ask you about, because I was looking online at a summary of the book. By the way, this is the way technology is great. I just ordered the book while he was giving that answer. So, yeah. You'll probably hear bells ringing on cash registers right now for your royalties on that one. So,
huge.
but yeah. So I'm reading some of the bullet points, that you have in here on your. And by the way, you do have a website, right? JustinPoythress.com.
Yes.
We'll include a link to that. But I was reading this on the website, and so I'm going to read these 4 bullet points: how philosophy has impacted the modern understanding of self, why your identity feels shaky, how the Bible can transform your sense of self, and 3 principles for living in the identity Jesus gives you. I want to go back to that first bullet point there, because I think, thanks to Carl Trueman, Charles Taylor, and others, a little bit of the history of where we've come from and how we've gotten to where we are is always very helpful. And it looks like you've included some of that in the book, right?
It's really funny you mentioned that, because Truman and Taylor, the modern self, and and the rise and triumph of the modern self.
I always have a hard time
Secular
remembering that
Age.
long title. I have a hard time.
Yeah, and Taylor's Secular Age were the best 2 resources I leaned on hardest in my doctoral studies. And really, I would just say I'm really I would say Brian Rosner as well. I'd mention him. He's done some good identity work. He's a principal of Ridley College in Australia. They've done. There's a lot of good identity work out there. My aim in this is trying to, first of all, be pretty ground level and accessible for young adults. And it's also, I'm trying to be constructive and not merely philosophical as far as, okay, how do I actually think about moving forward in my identity? And really the Christian answer boils down to you become what you are. And that's beautifully simple and complex at the same time. You are a new creation in Christ, and you become more of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful thing. I'm glad you wrote it. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's Amazon says it'll be here in the next day, and next weekend I'm up in New Hampshire speaking to youth workers on identity for a Saturday. So it's awesome. Going to be fun to read that and be able to tap into it. And thank you for doing that, Justin. This has been great. I always end with. Or I try to end all the time with two questions for you. I always say keep it like to a sentence or two, 30 seconds. Give a 30-second snippet. You got 30 seconds before the screen goes black. What are you going to say to parents? 30 seconds before the screen goes black. What are you going to say to youth workers? Give us a push.
You want me to start with parents?
Yeah, go ahead. However you want to do it. And I don't have a timer running here. But keep it to 30 seconds.
Yep. I would say to parents, first of all, you're doing a good job, and it's really tough. And I would also say, look, if I want to give you one practical suggestion, it's limit, this is maybe overly, but limit screen time and especially limit social media exposure, because you need to have your identity formed in other ways.
Yeah.
Those will be there. They'll be there waiting for them. They're not really going to miss out as much as the kids think they are going to. For youth workers, I would say I would kind of repeat what I said earlier. It's understanding, I think, that the identity crisis is much, much bigger than sexual and gender identity, and that you don't need to, and in fact, many ways, I don't think it's optimal to let me hammer away at sexuality. Let me hammer away at gender. Let's get down to a deeper level and just like ground ourselves in some kind of stable identity in Jesus, in God. And that's a beautiful theological connection point with the Bible to give answers to the starting line questions of, who am I? Where do I belong? Where do I find community? How do I find purpose? Those are the questions. If you answer those questions, you're going to hit more important things than sexuality and gender.
Yeah. And we say all the time, those are the developmental tasks. Those are the developmental questions kids are asking, and we have to talk about these things from a younger age. Kids may not verbalize it consciously, but that's the search they're on. So, yeah, this is a beautiful thing. Justin, it is a joy to be able to chat with you. It's just great, the resources you have, the fact that you're a Philly guy, points up. The fact that you're a Cowboys fan, 5 points off. But we'll try to. That's the next podcast we'll have. We'll try to work you over on that one. So
we'll dig in.
I don't have to. Are you a Phillies fan?
Oh yeah. Actually, I came to
it.
baseball later, and so I didn't have that. And the Phillies, I came to baseball like around the late thousands.
Okay.
Leading up to their one championship.
That's right. 2008. That was great. So good. This is excellent. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Justin Poythress. You can find more about him at justinpoythress.com. And if you're wondering, how do I spell that? Well, we probably have it in the intro, but Poythress, as in Vern Poythress, right? And I tried to hold back. I did not want to say, as soon as I saw your last name, I mean, that's what came to mind. But like, you get asked that all the time, I'm sure. You Vern's son? Yeah, okay. I know how that is. My dad was a pastor, so I do. And I have the same name as him, first name and last name. So yeah, you get that. But we want to encourage you all to get the book, Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. And think about these things, folks. Think about what we talked about today because, as Justin said, it's here to stay. And we need to learn how to navigate these things in ways that bring honor and glory to God rather than indulging our selfish, prideful, self-centered selves and bringing honor and glory to the kingdoms of, we read about it, right? The world, the flesh, kings of the world, the flesh, and darkness. So thank you so much, Justin. Blessings to you.
Hey, thank you.
All right, and we'll catch you all on the next episode of Youth Culture Matters.
Thanks for joining us for Youth Culture Matters, a podcast from the Center for Parent-Youth Understanding. If you'd like to learn more about today's youth culture, visit our website at cpyu.org. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, email us at podcast@cpyu.org.